Hello, Grats and Gits. Welcome back to Happy Corrupted Wargaming. We did it, gents. We took another one. We took another GT win. This is actually really, really cool because this is back-to-back GT wins. I'm super excited and super proud about it. This one had a few peculiarities that I'm going to share with you guys. I think you're really going to learn a lot about from competing in 40K, because one of the things that I'm starting to realize is when it comes to taking these big wins and repeatedly putting up results, man, a lot more of it is under your control than you might think. So, how to win in GT? Listen, every single tournament is going to have lessons to learn, and I certainly 100% got some lessons heavily ingrained in me on this particular tournament. We had some very, very solid competition. Like, our entire WTC team was here. There were multiple prospects for the WTC team. There were several old WTC players who were here. It wasn't the biggest tournament. It was only 44 players, but we had a very high quality amount of players in there, and I was really impressed with everybody. There were 3 stable tables, so the layouts was a little bit different. And for all of you guys who are looking to participate in a tournament, or if you happen to be a TO or can influence a TO at all, pay attention to what I'm about to say, because this is awesome. The way we did it is that we had only 3 layouts, and all 3 tables were set up for the entire tournament. And every round had its own, deployment, just like a table tournament does. But you did not know which table you were going to get. You were going to get one of the 3 style of tables, which meant that for your list building, you couldn't really skew really hard. Because what if you get screwed and you're taking an all melee army and you put them like on the battlefield and you get the shooting lane army, the shooting lane table, I mean, or you take the all tank army, but you get you get randomly assigned to the, oops, there's buildings everywhere table. So it really punishes skews in list building, and it really puts your skills at building lists to the challenge. So that was a really, really cool thing, and I love it. I've played this style of tournament twice now, and I got to be honest with you, I love this style of tournament. Anyway, one of the other really cool things is that we were really pleased to host one of the French league judges. He flew all the way over from France to Norway to help train our TOs up so that we can make sure that we are hosting the highest quality events possible over here in Norway. And man, the work that all the Norwegian guys have been putting in has been showing, because I can tell you, everyone over here is getting way freaking better, and our tournaments are just being hosted way better. So just shout out to the Norwegian community. You guys are rocking. It was actually Johan. So if you guys watched my video where I was interviewing the French judge about how the French leagues work, he's the guy who came over. So it was cool to get to meet him in person. So big shout out to you, man. Thanks for coming over. So anyway, there's a lot of really big lessons. One of the things I'm going to leave you with right now, and then I'm going to elaborate later on in the video, is your list choice can enable your win at a tournament, but your list will not win your tournament. So for example, the list I brought is the same that I've been playing for a little while. There's been no need to change it because it's just been running pretty freaking perfectly, and we'll go over that in just a second. But that list can't win the GT. The list, however, does give me the opportunity to win the GT, because that list has the ability to punch up into anything, and it has the ability to be flexible into lots of armies, and it has the ability, like I'm going to show you in just a little bit, even if I get a bad matchup, if I get a correct table, it can still give me a path to victory. So your list enable, but they don't win your GT. You, the player, wins the GT. It's your decisions. It's the way that you play. It's the way that you handle pressure that wins the GT. But the list does enable it. You really need a list that can win a GT if you're trying to win the GT. You can't bring a list that is only good into 1 or 2 matchups. So let's talk a little bit more about it. But basically, my list is the exact same. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I've got Dante, Lamartes, 2 Sang Priest, 1 with Icon of the Angel, and 1 with Visage of Death. Both of those enhancements are completely useless. They look great on paper, and I just find that I think I used Icon proc once this entire tournament, and it's like, that sounds about right. It's 25 points for the 2 of them. I had 25 points left in my army, so I put them in there. If you don't have 25 points off, you're not missing on anything. 1 jump captain with the Thunderhammer, a Calidus, 2x5 jump pack intercessors, 1x10 jump pack assault intercessors. That will, of course, be going with a Sang Priest and my captain. 1 10-man JPI with Death Company, or Death Company with Jump Pack, not JPI. Oh, geez, I wrote that wrong. 1 10-man Death Company with Jump Packs. That is obviously with Lamartes. And I can tell you right now, the 10-man of JPI is cut when we get the new codex out, because once we get points to the codex, I'm no longer running the 10-man with jump pack because the Sang Priest don't get jump packs anymore, so they're out. And I'm probably keeping the 10-man Death Company with jump pack with Lamarques. It's going to have to be minimum 60 points cheaper for me to consider it, but just having that one unit with the -1 damage is such a big deal that I'm still going to want to keep that unit. But let's be very clear, it is no longer worth 400 points, so it's going to have to come down in points significantly. But it's something I definitely do want to keep. I took one 10-man of Van Vets, and they were led by Dante and another Sang Priest. Once again, Van Vets are 100% out. I can think of no reason to bring Van Vets anymore in Blood Angels. They're for what they bring you. There's basically no reason. You're just going to take 5 mans of Jump Pack Assault Intercessors, and then you're going to take probably 5 mans of Death Company with Jump Pack jump packs as well. But I don't think that there's any place for Van Vets anymore. Not now that the Sang Priest is gone, because you lose the AP and you lose the Fiona Pain. It's too much. Then I have 2 units of scouts. They're Chads. They're amazing. I had one scout score me like 20 points in one of my games. The Death Company Dreadnought, which sadly pour one out for my homie. That data sheet is completely dead, and I think it's awful in the new codex, unfortunately. So this is probably the last hurrah of that bad boy. And then the Ball Predator, which just freaking rocks, and it still rocks in the codex. So I'll keep them. Oh yeah, sorry. There's a Calidus in there as well, who is also just the greatest value in the game for 100 points. So the list is awesome. You guys know how it works. You've seen my review of how the list works. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. These were the missions we played. We played Mission B, which is Purge the Foe, Smoke and Mirrors, Tipping Point. We played Terraform, Stalwarts, Crucible of Battle. We played Scorched Earth, Stalwarts. So you can see them. You basically see the missions. We played standard GW missions, and the terrain that we used was just modified GW terrain. So let me kind of show you what the tables worked, because this was actually a very, very interesting facet of the tournament. So here was layout 1, and it can be a little confusing. You see all the lines because we would use multiple different deployments. We would take Search and Destroy here, we would take Crucible, and we would take Tipping Point, because those were the 3 those were the 3 deployment styles that we had over the course of the 5 games. So every table was made specifically for those 3 deployments. So we would play layout. If you got layout 1, you could play on the Crucible of Battle, which would have the big stripe down the center, which I don't know why I'm using my hands, because you guys probably can't see where I'm putting my hands here. Search and Destroy. So like on this map, for example, it's awesome for melee armies if you get Search and Destroy, because you can just deploy basically perfectly safe, and you love it. On Crucible of Battle, you've got great deployment for Crucible of Battle. However, if it's the Crucible of Battle that we had, all the objectives are actually end up being in the center, and you can't take cover. So ignore where the objectives are placed in this picture. They aren't real, because that'll change based off the style of deployment that you have, of course. And then lastly, if you're playing Tipping Point, this was also very good for melee armies. Then if we look at layout number 2, it was much worse for melee armies on Search and Destroy. It was okay on Crucible, and if you were playing Tipping Point, it was actually kind of bad. Then for melee speaking, I mean, it's a good layout. I'm talking about from a melee army's perspective. And then lastly, on the last round, this was the layout we had. You could ignore the Hammer and Anvil deployment. We didn't play that. It was fantastic for Search and Destroy. It was fantastic for Tipping Point, and it was actually really good for Crucible. So this one was just basically good for melee armies all the way. So I would say that this particular event was skewed in a melee army's favor, but at the same time, you were always going to have at least 2 of the objectives were wide out in the open. So there was some give and take. Anyway, here's my path, and I'm going to talk about the lessons that I learned so I can impart those onto you. So my first path, I played against Eldar. It ended up winning 99-27. Here's the deal about Eldar, guys. If you're playing a high-pressure army like Blood Angels, or even Orcs, or any high-pressure melee army, what the high-pressure melee army wants to do to you is we want you to stand right next to each other so that we can box you in. If you huddle up and you think you're going to make like this really strong turtle shell because you've got your avatar and you've got your anti-infantry charges that's coming in, that's what melee pressure armies want you to do. We want you to be next to each other. So what I highly recommend doing, if you're playing an army, if you're playing against a melee pressure army and you're playing your Eldar, you want to spread out everywhere. Take advantage of the fact that you have this crazy MSU thing going on. Do not let us melee pressure armies concentrate all of our firepower into one quadrant. If you do, it's going to be a bad time. So I had a great time playing. I got to walk my opponent through the game, and I was able to help him like understand maybe how to play a little bit different in the future against melee pressure armies. Big shout out. It was a great game. My second round was against Mr. Jurgen. Now, this was actually a fantastic game. I played Crusher twice. This was a perfect example of a player who's really good at the game, but just isn't quite used to playing against opponents who won't let him get away with making a mistake. So he makes like one mistake in the game, and I'm able to capitalize on it. But he did really well. He had one little slip up, and so I was able to pounce. Had he not made that slip up, honestly, the score would probably be reversed. But one of the things that tends to happen for a lot of people is that they start getting really, really good, and they start practicing, and they need to start expanding the people that they practice with. Now, I don't know if this is true in my opponent's case here. Actually, I don't think it was. So we kind of reviewed over it. It's just he just made a mistake, and I happened to capitalize on it, which is something that happens occasionally. But this was a fantastic. He was a great player. I really enjoyed playing against him, and I did take the win there. Blood Angels, we had a big mirror, 99-41. I have a big lesson from this, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. So you need to stay tuned about how the Blood Angels thing really goes on. Then in my round 4, I went Tyranid Crusher Stampede again. It was 67-58. This was a crazy game. This is one of those style games where it's like, I did a move, it didn't work, and I go, crap, I lost the game. And then my opponent goes for a move, and he goes, crap, now I've lost the game. And I say, aha, I'm back in it. And then I do something, and I go, crap, I've lost the game. And it goes back to my opponent, who does the exact same thing. This was a wild, wild matchup. And then lastly, I had a game against the T-Suns, which was our WTC player who played T-Suns, who was by far our highest scoring player last year. And he was actually one of the highest scoring players in the entire tournament. Not last year, I guess, a few months ago. Really crazy. But I ended up taking that win 75-70. Now, here's the deal, guys. There are some very critical lessons that I have cemented in myself from this tournament that I really need to share with you. First off, all in. If you're going all in, that means going all in. Way too often do I see people who are saying, okay, this is my go turn, so I'm going to send 50% of my units forward. Now, and also I want you to keep in mind, I'm talking about this from like a melee pressure perspective. So if you're a melee pressure player, like, it's kind of my style. So I would assume a lot of you guys are melee pressure styles as well. But I know not everyone, of course. But if you are going all in, you really, really desperately need to go all in. This does two things. One, when you full send your entire army, you're going to get more charges, you're going to get more assaults, you're going to get more opportunity to do the critical and devastating damage and get the critical positioning that you need. And two, if your plan fails, you can potentially screw your opponent by forcing them to split fire too much in their turn. So let's say I send my 4 death bricks forward and I don't connect with any of them. Well, now my opponent has to decide which one of my bricks he's going to kill, because the chances that he can kill all of them is almost zero with any army in the game. So he's going to have to decide, all right, I'm going to kill this unit and I'm going to critically wound this unit, which leaves me an opportunity to still play the game. Now, if I only send 1 or 2 units forward and they both fail, my opponent's just going to kill those 2 units and then be in perfect position to wipe the rest of my army in another turn. But if I full send and I fail everything, he's going to get to deal with 1 and half deal with another, maybe deal with 2. But then the other 2 are still in great position that they can go do devastating damage in my 3rd turn. So the other thing is, if you go all in, then you do succeed, you're just going to win. So I'm not saying that you need to go all in, but when you decide it's time to go all in, you can't go half in. If you go half in, you're going to lose. You have to go all in if you're going all in. That means send everything. I mean, if you have like a 30-point objective holder somewhere, you don't have to send that. But seriously, if your plan is to go all in and kill someone, go all in. This is how I ended up winning, 4 of these games. Because I realized the moment was, I have to go full send. So I went full send on all of them, and actually twice of it worked out, and 2 times it didn't work out, but it left my opponent in a pickle, because then he had to pick and choose what he was going to deal with, which left me enough to actually deal with him later because I was in good position. Anyway, you need a game plan for going first, and you need a game plan for going second. This is something that happened to me when I was playing in the Blood Angels Mirror, and I was playing against a Jet named Matthias, who is an awesome lad, and I really appreciate my game with him. And we did a really, really interesting thing, and I wish I had taken a picture so I could show it with you, but I'm going to try to elucidate it for you with my words. So basically, we were playing on Search and Destroy, and I had my Dante with Vanguard Vet Squad deployed almost on the line, but not actually on the line. And he did the exact same thing with his Dante squad with Vanguard Veteran and Sanguinary Priest squad. And That is scary because what it means is whoever goes first is going to get to charge the other person's critical brick. And when they charge the other person's critical brick, it's gonna freaking hurt. And since it's turn 1, no one has 2 CP, so no one can fight on death. It is a big, big problem. So what I did is I went ahead and deployed everything else in my army, and he did the same. And I decided, okay, if I'm going first, I know I'm charging his Dante brick. But if I'm going second, I know his Dante is charging my Dante brick. So how can I blunt that? Well, because of the way that I was deployed in certain terrain, what I did is I took a unit of scouts and I deployed them next to my Dante's brick. So what I knew would happen if I went second, I would just scout my scouts in a line to protect my Dante brick from the charge. But he didn't do the same. Because what he did is he planned for going first, but he didn't plan for going second. So I ended up going first, which meant I charged his Dante brick and I got a really good advantage. It was a fun game. We had a good time. But had I gone second and he went to charge me, I would have been totally fine because what would have inevitably happened is he would have been forced to charge my scouts and just pile into my Dante brick, maybe killing 2 or 3 guys, which meant on my turn I would be free to fall back and charge and annihilate him. Because I planned for going first and I planned for going second. So this is a critical lesson that I'm going to elucidate more in future videos, but I want you guys to grasp this right now. And then lastly, here is the deal. I must have told this to every single person I talked to at the tournament this weekend. And this is something I've been harping with a lot of my coaching clients as well, which, by the way, if you're looking for coaching, you can check out my coffee link down below. And I am super excited to get you prepared for your next GT, get you just playing on a higher level, get you caught up with your gaming group, whatever you're looking for. I'm here to help you succeed in the world of Warhammer 40,000. But here's the deal. You do not need primary in turn 2 in almost every single situation. You don't need primary in turn 2. If you can get primary safely, go get it. But if it is going to cost you a critical asset to try to score primary in turn 2, especially when you know your opponent's going to be in a position to shoot you or do other things, don't waste your critical assets. I am very, very comfortable getting a 0 on primary in turn 2. Does not bother me. If that means that I can stage in other locations to make sure that I'm going to be able to have a very successful round 3, round 4, round 5. So if you find yourself losing games because you're like, oh, well, I have to just put a unit out on an objective and then I just get shot to death. It's like, oh, just stop doing it. Just stop doing it. Stop forcing yourself to try to score primary in round 2 if you know you're going to get shot and killed anyway. And just give up on primary in that round 2, or don't be afraid to give up on primary in that round 2, and then crush your opponent for the rest of the game. So that is the 3 big lessons I learned from this tournament. It was a great time. I had an absolute blast, and all of my opponents were freaking legends, and it was a super, super nice experience. So this was Exterminatus at Today 6, where we have 2 major GTs a year. It's actually the largest independent gaming club in the world, as far as we can tell. We have, I think, we've got an 80% capacity at any point in time. We've got, what is it? So that means, so we've got 40 permanent setup gaming tables with full terrain for everything. It's kind of a wild place. If you're ever in Norway or in Oslo, give me a shout out and we'll go up to the club. We've got a streaming room. We'll play a game. We'll give you a tour. It's an absolute blast. I have no ownership or affiliation with it other than I'm just a member, but it is such a cool place. So without further ado, everyone, I hope you have an amazing day. I'm going to get back into tactical videos this week for you, but I hope you learned some lessons along with me as I learned them in this particular tournament. So crump on, baby. Cheers.